Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Crash Zoom. I'm Rough Draft Associate Editor Sammie Purcell, and I'm here, as always, with my podcast co-host, Aaron Strand. How you doing, Aaron?
I am doing all right, Sammie. We're in peak summer. We're at the midpoint of the year. Can you believe that?
No, it's so crazy. This morning I was thinking about how close we are to 2026, and
Whoa.
I don't know how I feel about it. So,
oh God, yeah, you just made me
gross.
Throw up in my mouth.
Sorry.
Yeah, this has been like the longest 6 months, and yet also
the
simultaneously.
Shortest.
Yeah, but I think this is also like the new paradigm, right? Like there is no monoculture. People don't go to movies anymore, and time loses all meaning. I was even reflecting, like when people ask me, and I don't know if this is about being a dad. I don't know if this is I'm about to turn 36. When people ask me, like, like some reference point in time, even from the last 5 years, of like, oh, hey, like I mentioned like a vacation or like that something cool happened, and they're like, oh yeah, like when was that? It is as if someone, like, the painting of my memory, someone just took their hand and smeared it across my brain. I can't distinguish places and times and things, and
Yeah.
I can't put things anywhere. Is this just me? Am I crazy?
No, I don't think so. I do that thing where, like, someone will be like, oh, 1980, and I'll be like, yeah, 20 years ago. Like, it hasn't like moved past that point, you know? And I don't know if that's something that like is specific to us coming into a new millennium. Like, is that why we do that? Like, did people in the 90s do that with like the 50s? Be like, I was 20 years ago. Like, like, I don't know what that specifically is, but I don't think you're alone in this. Time has no meaning. It moves fast, it moves slow. I don't remember anything. So
yes. Well, great. I can't wait to contribute to the soup of just jibber jabber that we're all swimming in, and talk about what's going on in the entertainment world. Because my God, if there's ever a nonsensical place where time has no meaning, we're in it.
No, it's really juicy today. We're going to jump into it. But before we do that, if you've never listened to Crash Zoom before, welcome. We're so glad to have you. And what Aaron and I do here is we take a look at what's going on in the film industry on a big picture level and try to boil down why that matters to the independent artist. And if you listen today and you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also watch us on YouTube at Crash Zoom Podcast. Be sure to rate and review as well. That really helps us out. But before we dive into the news, Aaron, I think I already know the answer to this, but what have you been watching? Anything?
Oh God, what have I done in the last week? I can't remember anything. I haven't.
This is where Letterboxd is actually really helpful, logging.
I know, but I've even fallen off my Letterboxd reviews. Oh my God, it's a tragedy.
The worst.
So yeah, I haven't watched anything. I've been reading. I'm reading a book about harakiri in preparation for the next Behind the Slate show on July 24th. Yeah, my favorite film scholar, Stephen Prince, who wrote one of my favorite books about Akira Kurosawa. He wrote a book about Masakai Kobayashi, the director of Harakiri, that is like really hard to find in print, and like the paperback. I mean, there are no paperbacks. It's only hardcovers, and they're kind of expensive. So I had to buy it on Kindle. I don't like reading on Kindle as much. I'm trying to get through this Stephen Prince book, which is wonderful. It's not like a chore to get through, but that's what I'm really like focusing sort of my little bit of leisure time on. I did go to ATL Film Party this last week, which is one of my favorite local events put on by my good friend Brooke Sonnenreich, and I saw 5 lovely dance-themed shorts as part of Atlanta Film Party. And it was also really cool because I think it's the second time they've done it up at the Goat Farm here in Atlanta, but it was just so cool to see such a big turnout. Like, I've been going to these events for years, and this was, I think, the biggest one I've ever been to. Like, a few hundred people showed out to watch these local filmmakers. The vibe in the room was really great, and it's just awesome to be able to walk into a room and like know so many people, and like there's so many people that I respect, and it's just a real joy and a pleasure of being an independent artist.
Yeah, I feel like those, specifically ATL film parties, kind of keep getting bigger. Like I went to one last year and I was sort of like you, like shocked at how many people were there, which is great.
Yeah,
Hmm.
totally. Yeah, I mean, she does such an amazing job of like,
Yeah.
uh, building the events, super thoughtful in sort of everything about it, and so it's been so cool to watch those events grow. It's such a great concept and idea to showcase local talent.
I've been having a very Sammy, I think, forward week of watching movies.
So, oh no, what does this mean? This could go in a few different directions.
I know. I rewatched some classics, at least classics for me. Well, one I think is a certifiable classic. The other probably classic for me. So
Are
I
we gonna be is
rewatched.
music hurl? Are we? Is it a musical?
No, actually not. Um,
Oh,
it's kind of rom dram forward. But I rewatched Broadcast News for like the millionth time, which was just a great time. Wonderful film, perfect. Some might say, if you're sitting right here, that's me. And then I also rewatched While You Were Sleeping, which I normally reserve for kind of a Christmas, New Year's watch, because that's kind of around when that movie takes place. But I didn't. I don't know. We were just kind of in a rom-commy kind of mood, turned it on. And I think that movie is actually pretty special because it's been like a joke for years where everyone's like, oh, isn't that the one where she stalks the guy in the coma? Like, if you just kind of say what the plot is of that movie, it sounds insane, you know? But it's the type of thing where like the tone is pitched so well. It's like actually funny. There's some really good jokes. It's got a great cast, particularly in like the family of the guy in the coma. Like it's like got Glynis Johns. Oh my God, who else is in that? Jack Warren is like the godfather, like Jack Warden, I should say. It's got like a really great cast. Sandy's great. Bill Pullman's great. And I think it's just a testament to like, even if you have like this really high concept, slightly insane premise, if you do everything else right, like tonally, script wise, casting wise, it can all work. Oh, sorry, just knocked something over. um,
contain your excitement.
sorry. If you do everything else right, like those things can still work. And I feel like Hollywood, I mean, there's so many things wrong with the way like Hollywood treats modern romantic comedies, but I think part of it is like they're afraid to be cheesy. Like it's all about like commenting on the rom-com, instead of just like kind of letting people live in the cheese and like trusting your jokes and your actors to like carry you through that. So yeah, I really love While You're Sleeping. I think it's a great little rom-com.
So many great points that you just brought up here,
Mm-hmm.
and I really second everything that you're saying. It's so obvious today that so much of what actually makes it to our screens, either on the big screen or on the streaming services in our homes, that it's so obvious that they were sold as pitches. It's like I'm watching a pitch
Yeah.
rather than watching a fucking movie. I mean, we were talking
Mm-hmm.
about William Friedkin's Sorcerer like last week that I had this
Yeah.
hankering to watch Sorcerer. Sorcerer would never like survive past pitch like in
No.
today's Hollywood, like in the
It's
way
like,
that it's
yeah.
done. And that's true for sort of like auteur 70s New Hollywood kind of vibe stuff. But I think it's a great point that that's sort of like the like 90s absurdist premise that then
Yeah.
you let the actors kind of live within, and which even trickles down into like all and like can really span across genres. I mean, and it
Mm-hmm.
was like a 90s staple of this
Yeah.
sort of like weird surreality that was brought to the entertainment.
Even like Sleepless in Seattle is another great one where you're like, the premise of that movie is insane. Like they don't meet until the last like 5 minutes, but like it works. It's great.
Yeah,
Yeah. I miss
because
stuff like that.
and so because like everything has to survive this ultra tight pitching process, and then like you said, it's really being made for the social media commentary
Yeah.
around it rather than
Mm-hmm.
the thing in and of itself. We end up with it's so weird because we lack monoculture and yet we exist in homogenitainment. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, everyone like exists in their little like it's all an echo chamber, right? Like that's all social media is at this point. But you're right. Like I don't know. I don't know if movies are being made to be tweeted about, but it certainly feels like that sometimes. Yeah.
1000% they are, and we will be
Yeah.
talking about one later today that definitely was not tweeted about.
Was not tweeted about. Oh yeah. RIP. Sad. All right, let's get into it. We'll get to that later, but let's get into some of this news. So This first item, it came from, I saw originally, again, really been shouting them out lately, the Daily's newsletter. But it's titled, Can Cinema Survive the Next 20 Years? Exhibition Execs on the Post-COVID Recovery and Beyond. So this is a poll from Stephen Follows, who's like a film analyst. You can follow his Substack. And this is the
Really
second
great
part.
Substack.
Yeah, it's a great Substack. And this is, I believe, the second part in sort of a multi-part series that he's doing, basically on kind of like viability of the film industry, sort of from an exhibition and cinema owner perspective. So he surveyed 246 film industry professionals, including theater owners, about the future of the theater going experience, basically. And I think to sort of like break it down in some stats, I thought the dailies did a pretty great job of kind of breaking everything down. But I think sort of the big picture thing here is right in the title. Can cinema survive the next 20 years? And according to this sample size, 54% of exhibition executives believe traditional moviegoing has less than 20 years left as a viable business model. So that's where the 20 years comes in the title there. Some other stats. So we've got only 1 in 8 theater operators say they fully recovered to pre-COVID revenue levels. So I think we've talked a little bit in the past about how, like, yes, like, we kind of go back and forth in terms of like whether we should be optimistic about the theatrical experience. And I think there has been some excitement in the past like year or two over specific movies, but I think this kind of 1 in 8 theater operators talking about pre-COVID revenue levels sort of helps us kind of put that in perspective. There's also a lot of stuff in here about theatrical windows, which we talk about a lot. So 81% of these execs want exclusive theatrical windows of at least 6 weeks. There's a ton of other stats that we can get into, but I'll stop there for now. So what did you make of this survey, Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, I think most importantly, it's we need to remember that this isn't data saying that
not an economic predictor.
Yeah, this is
yeah.
This
like
is
an
a
optimism
vibe check.
predictor. Yeah.
Exactly. This is pure vibe check. This is a vibe check. And check. The vibes are not good. So like, which is very, very understandable. It was interesting to read this article in the context of this week because I actually just had a sit down meeting with a independent theater owner outside of Atlanta, and we talked all about sort of what the economic reality is for this independent cinema in this day and age, and it's really rough. So the margins on tickets are bad. Studios and distributors take half of every ticket sold, and the profit is essentially been unchanged over the last 15 years. So when you factor in inflation and really the specific costs of the goods that go into concessions, which is where a theater makes its money, and then the huge increasing costs of upgrades and repairs, this is essentially an unprofitable model as it's currently constructed, at least in the sense of like just we put out movies that the studios are putting out. Yeah, we are playing by the rules of the 90s and the 2000s. We put out the new releases. We play by the studio's rules as far as like contractually when they need to be shown and for how long and whatever, and we just expect people to come. That business is dying. And so, what do I think? I think that they're right. I think the multiplex cinema model is not long for this world, and I would predict that it multiplexes, and the sort of like, hey, we just put it up on the screen, guy, and like, yeah, the floors are sticky and the popcorn is mid, but like, here's 8 screens. I think that is definitely on its way out. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. This made me sort of think about, and I'd be interested to see, he kind of previewed the next chapter of this, which will be sort of like, how do theater goers and this kind of survey group think that things are going to change? Which I'd be surprised if they do. I mean, they already are, and they already did. Like, we used to not have those like really nice seats, where you could like lean back and they got seat warmers and all that stuff, but you have to compete with like a home viewing experience, right? So like, it's not like the same thing, but I think theaters will continue to sort of like evolve in some capacity. It made me think of Taylor Swift's like the Eras tour, playing in AMC's and like surpassing. Don't smirk at me. It's it's like, because you know what she did? She like bypassed Hollywood studios, right? Like that was just a direct deal with AMC, and I don't know like the specifics of their like monetary compensation from that, but I assume it wasn't nothing. And like they didn't have to split it with a studio, right? You just got to split it with Tasteway.
I might hold on. First of all, to clarify, my smirk was only because I thought you were going to make a metaphor to Taylor Swift going through her eras as like as a metaphor for like theater chains going through eras of development. I was like, they really need to move
just like the Eras tour.
Yeah. So I didn't understand you were referencing Eras Tour, the movie, as like a model of distribution, which is a totally salient point. I was sorry. Apologies.
Oh, no. It's fine. I feel like, I could have said that really theaters need to go into their Reputation era and just not give a fuck. But no, I do think that and I don't know if Beyonce did the same thing. I would have to double check, but I know that Taylor Swift like bypassed the traditional release model, right? So she just went straight to the theater. And if she can do that, like why can't other, kind of event screenings kind of do that? So I do feel like that might be like a way to keep this sort of business alive, even if it's not in the traditional way we're used to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not unreasonable to look to the past as a clue of what the future might look like, because multiplexes were a relatively recent innovation and really didn't come around until the post-blockbuster time of the 80s when multiplexes became a viable model. Before that, it was all it was the decaying cinema palaces from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, right, which were large single-screen auditoriums, often for 1,000 to 3,000 people. That was sort of like the grand model that was innovated in the 20s. That like it took all the way until the 60s for that to like finally die, being like, okay, like 1,000 people are not coming to a single screening of a movie anymore. Mm-hmm. But beneath that sort of like cinema palace model existed the single screen neighborhood theater. These would usually be like second run cinema houses, but they were more intimate, they were smaller, and I think that sort of smaller size brick and mortar establishment could present itself as a viable path forward. Because look, at the end of the day, like there is still enough differentiation, I believe, and enough emotional connection to in-person storytelling that smaller, more eventized cinemas can survive on and will remain viable. Like the thing that I think is so often lost in this conversation, and we talk, you can talk about theatrical windows and whatever, and what an AMC looks like. And I don't know if you saw this, but AMC is now publishing how long they're running advertisements before every movie. They've started putting it on their website. They said this film.
Watch the trailers and the ads.
Did you see this? Did you see this? Yes. Yeah. Yes. Team Aaron win. Okay, but at the end of the day, like it's very simple. People need value. Like these. Mm-hmm. Theaters aren't charities. They're supposed to be delivering value. And right now, the multiplex model that has only been around for like 40 years is not delivering that value. However, if you can eventize your showings, if you can make it more about the interpersonal connection, I think a lot of times in that multiplex model, there was a lot of theaters were built on sort of a notion of escapism. And I'm not sure that if escapism is necessarily what society needs from its third spaces right now. I think people need connection and like interpersonal communication more than anything. And I'm a prisoner of my own experience here completely, but when I look at like what is happening at our independent cinemas here in Atlanta with the Plaza and the Terra, and the fact that like pretty much like half of the week, every night is a community event hosted by members of the community who are putting on a show, who are throwing a party after the film. Mm-hmm. That is the sort of like connection that is like elevating movie screenings beyond just like, oh, hey, we're throwing this thing up on a screen. You can come or not, like, we don't really care, we're just a movie theater. And instead it's like, no, come here, meet your friends, like hang out, talk afterwards. Like, this is a space to do that. And that's just one of the ways that you can add that sort of emotional importance to these spaces. But I definitely think that that's sort of where the future is heading.
Yeah, I agree. Because I feel like those sort of, I mean, obviously, like theaters have always done like retrospectives of whatever it might be, but I feel like it's so much more prevalent now. Like, yes, at independent cinemas, like at the Plaza, at the Terra down here, but like if you looked at Regal Atlantic Station and like at their kind of like lineup last week, like or over the past couple weeks, like they were playing Clueless. They have played like It's a Wonderful Life. They were playing The Sound of Music, I think, at one point. Like everyone's doing it. And I do think like there is this hope that like it's like nostalgia, and not in a way that I like really mind, because like I like those movies, and if that's what theaters need to do to sort of like keep things alive, I don't mind. But I do agree that that seems to have been something that's gotten more popular over the past few years and will continue to sort of happen.
Well,
But
yeah, I mean, the nostalgia value of repertory screenings will last a little. I think it will last a little while, but I do think that that will fade.
because we're not going to be nostalgic for anything that comes out. Sorry, but like, what movies? Yeah, it's a pipeline, like,
I think people would be nostalgic for Sinners in like 10 years. Like
that's true.
Sinners
that's true.
10-year anniversary.
I shouldn't say we're not going to be nostalgic for everything, but but I do feel like the list will continue to like shorten,
For sure.
But
Mm-hmm. But I will say, so the counterpoint to that is that, like, I think a lot about a screening. So a couple screenings that I went to recently, and just in the past year, one was for like a brand new print of a very hard to find film, Monty Hellman's The Cockfighter, which Videodrome presented here in Atlanta, and a woman named Kirla Janice had just written a book about it. And this movie is like not only very obscure, but it's wildly violent because it's all about cockfighting, and it's like a lot of animals die in this movie, which is like generally like box office death. And it was like they screened it at like 9 p.m. on a Wednesday, packed house, because yes, rare movie. Author was in the building, like giving a talk about the movie. Like, it was a whole vibe, like, and that, and something about like the creation of that vibe was very, very special. The other thing that I was thinking about is the tour for the Sweet East that Sean Price Williams and Nick Pinkerton went on. Packed house, because those two filmmakers came down, were in the building, gave the Q&A. Sean Price Williams like has, he shot Good Time, and so a lot of people like know him through the softies. So it's like I get that it's like there's a sort of like trickle down sort of Hollywood effect, but here was like a real independent movie with independent filmmakers. That's a new movie that ostensibly should have been, based on sort of just market analysis, should have been forgotten and generally like ignored, certainly from the Atlanta populace, because it's like a very New York based movie. And yet by turning it into an event, you got 320 people like out on a Thursday night, staying up at the theater till midnight, like, trying to talk to the filmmakers and hanging out with each other and talking about the movies. And like that is real value for the ticket price and for the experience. Now, is that survivable at scale? I don't know. But like, live music somehow manages to kind of like keep chugging along. The upfront costs of making a movie are so much different than the upfront costs of making a band. I understand the economics like don't work in a one-to-one comparison. I'm not an idiot, but like that, it's not just about a nostalgia play. It's about a real tactile in-person experience.
Yeah. I'm going to what are they doing? I think it's at Spring Cinema Tap House in Sandy Springs. They're doing like a Mamma Mia sing-along in a couple weeks. And I saw it and was like, 100% I'm going to that. Like, you know what I mean? So I think that is the sort of stuff that does bring people out. It's like more than just sitting there and watching a movie,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's about getting people engaged and getting people speaking to each other. I think that's where the sort of like the tipping point is for these cinemas. It's really just about how quickly can theater owners realize that? How quickly can they incentivize community engagement in that regard? I think the Plaza does a really good job of this.
Yeah.
And then and how quickly can people be willing to like jump at the opportunity? Because look, there's a lot of young people that are really interested in the history of cinema. Like Letterboxd and online cinema culture has really, really grown. If you provide them opportunities to hang out with their friends and make new friends and talk about movies, and then maybe even start putting on screenings yourself and make a little money from the ticket sales, like people will do this, and it does become a scene. It's very exciting. But there will be winners and there will be losers, and I don't know if that's like enough to sustain an entire industry. I mean, that's why I think the multiplex is going away, but this type of screening model, I believe, will survive.
Yeah. All right, let's go on and talk about a movie that did not do well theatrically by its company standards. So this article is from CNBC. It's written by Sarah Whitten, and it's titled "Pixar's Elio is emblematic of a bigger headwind for Hollywood." So just to get us started, Elio came out, I believe, last weekend, if I'm not mistaken, and it didn't do very well. So it's an original animated film. It tallied just 21 million in ticket sales during its first 3 days in theaters, which is a record low for Pixar. It's a new Pixar movie. I believe their last record low was Elemental, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
And this isn't an outlier. So animation as a whole has essentially seen sequels outperform original stories in recent years. So if you look at something like Inside Out 2, which was like their second highest opener ever, but compare that to Elemental, which came in at 29.6 million, and now Elio, which isn't doing well in theaters either. So this is a problem for live action as well, I would say, like, you know, with the Marvelization of everything and sequel culture and all that stuff. Like, I don't want to say this is something, or at least in my opinion, that is solely stuck with animation, but with live action, by that same token, it feels like there is room for new original stuff. Like Sinners is a great example. Like people came out to see something like that, right? So I guess to sort of start off this conversation, I wanted to ask if you have any ideas about why it appears to have been more difficult for animation. And we've been talking about animation a lot lately. And I think you mentioned something a few weeks ago about like the nostalgia factor for animation, and I wonder if that's just bigger here because it's for kids, so like it brings out something childlike, so sequels and things you recognize tend to do better. Like, I don't really know, but I was curious if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, I don't know if I necessarily have thoughts on that exactly, or the nostalgia elements of this. I think with Elio, I think this was just a terrible botched marketing job. I knew the movie existed. I knew it was coming out. I knew it was competing with F1, but that's only because I do this show and because I care about this film industry. But
right.
As a parent of a 3-year-old, this movie did not penetrate into my sphere at all. I have no idea what it's about. I have no idea why it would possibly be relevant for me to see. I feel like, particularly with kids' movies, like, the marketing teams are trapped in the 2000s where they're doing like their McDonald's like trinket partnerships, but that's not really relevant to a new generation of parents. I think they're really struggling of how to market these things on social media when a lot of their target audience kids maybe aren't allowed on social media, or like their social media use is like is controlled, or like, behind parental controls. But I think they're doing a really bad job of finding and targeting parents. I think they're doing a really bad job of utilizing influencers to get the word out about these movies and connecting. Again, it's all about like, it's not enough to just put a big picture on a screen. I don't know if it ever was, like that. That's another thing, is that like, look, like there were times when it was a lot easier, obviously, because of the scarcity of accessibility to these films made it so that you would end up at a theater more frequently. But like Charlie Chaplin in 1925 succeeded because he was offering something that other slapstick comedians were not doing. He was offering like a production value, a degree of pathos offset with the comedy, and just a level of skill that people had never seen before, and they told each other, like, you've got to see this, like, it's truly unique, you know what I mean? Like, and you felt like you were missing out on something. It's always been true. Like, the carnival barker nature of this industry has always been true. You've got to sell the story of why you need to come to the circus today. And Pixar has absolutely failed in that endeavor for almost a decade now. And I don't understand why they haven't changed strategies. I don't know why they haven't done better. It used to be a real skill of their studio, but there is no reason for it to, like, Elio feels totally irrelevant. And, like, I have no incentive of why I need to go see this movie outside of the fact that I'm the parent of a young kid. And that's a problem.
Right. And I think, kind of jumping off of that, and the article gets into this a little bit too, but, like, I mean, just, like, kind of going off my own experience with my nephews, like, there is so much children's, like, TV and movies and, like, video content out there that, like, you kind of have to, and by that same token, it's a whole production to take your child to the movie theater. Like, it's a lot of work getting popcorn, getting them to sit still. It costs money, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not like that hasn't been true before, but, like, there needs to be some sort of incentive, like you said, to go out and see this movie. And kind of since the pandemic, I guess, which is, like, no doubt a lot of where all this, like, kind of trouble starts, Pixar put their movies kind of direct to streaming, right? So I remember, like, I reviewed Turning Red. It was, like, one of my first kind of reviews for Rough Draft, a movie I really quite like. Like, I think it's very, very good. But, like, that movie went straight to streaming. Nothing really happened. I didn't see Luca. Like, Onward had, like, a short theatrical, but then, like, basically, like, kind of, like, shoveled it kind of right on over as well. And, like, so I feel like on some hand, people have gotten used to kind of having these things at home to watch. And then by that same token, it's such a production to take your whole family out to the movies. So if you don't know anything about this film, like you said, if you know anything about Elio, like, well, what's the point? We'll just watch something that I know my kids are going to enjoy and they're not going to, like, pitch a fit during it at home. Right. Or, like, by that same token, Moana 2, well, I know my kid likes Moana, so this will probably be fine. Let's go.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think there is also something to be said about some of the quality of these movies, you know, like, I also quite like Turning Red and thought it was very, very, very good.
Very sweet.
I thought Luca was trash. Like,
I didn't see Luca. But that's the other thing. Like, I saw Soul, which I thought was okay. I haven't seen Luca. I kind of barely watched Onward. I didn't really finish it. Like, I haven't seen a lot of these, you know, like, I didn't see Elemental. I didn't see Lightyear. Like, I just haven't seen a lot of these things, you know?
Yeah, totally. Now, you know, I think there's another element to some of this, which is, like, I hate being the person to say this, because it's like a lot of these movies, in order to make them feel relevant, the studios have been marketing them based on sort of socially progressive story elements within the film, which I think is a good thing. I mean, I think it's a good thing that socially progressive elements are within the broader culture. What I think is a bad thing is when your only marketing play is pandering to those socially progressive elements, and that's your only way to make a film seem relevant to modern audiences. And the byproduct is that you do end up alienating, like, a larger portion of the audience. So I think that has also been a mistake that has led into sort of, like, the broader sort of, like, awareness mission of Disney and Pixar in particular. And they have got to find new and inventive ways to make these films feel, you know, poignant and relevant and, like, important in the day and age, like, in today's day and age. And because, like, you're right, these things have been getting dumped onto streaming networks, but even within that, like, Moana cultivated its core audience on streaming. Encanto, which got totally screwed over by the pandemic, I think it was released in, like, 2021, like, it built, like, a sizable group of fans through streaming. So it's not that the like streaming to, like, a broader sort of franchise element is impossible, and the better stories, I think, do shine through, but it's really just comes back to, I know I'm just beating a dead horse at this point, but it's just like marketing. Like, come on, like, tell the story better.
Yeah. And we know what marketing can do, right? Like, I don't want to harp on this, like, too much again, but, like, people were in such like up in arms over sort of the like Anora marketing budget. And I'm like, well, that kind of worked. No,
It
you know what I
did.
mean? Like they did their job well and people saw that movie. Like it
Yeah.
won Oscars, you know? Yeah.
The big studios absolutely should be looking at the Neon playbook, which is social media heavy, which is like influencer based, which is like really like doing modern marketing. I mean, Zoran Mamdani just is going to be New York's next mayor because of like a smart marketing campaign.
Right.
I mean, a smart marketing campaign can only work if you have a message and a actual
that people
core,
resonate with.
To whatever it is that you're promoting, obviously, but like it's just mind-boggling to me. Like I am the absolute core audience for Elio, and I have zero idea what it's about.
Well, I think what's really funny, and this is just sort of a thought I was having kind of reading it, because I interviewed an animator on it, so I do know what it's about. But it's about a little kid who is mistaken, like he basically kind of meets aliens essentially, and they mistake him for being the ambassador to Earth because he's like the only human they've ever met. And he meets a little friend alien and like they go on an adventure. Sounds cute enough. And what I think is funny is Lilo and Stitch live action is like killing it right now, right? And that's like similar story, girl meets alien, friendship, right? But yeah, it's just interesting. Yeah, I think there's something else at the end of this thing. Oh yeah, here we go. Just a little side note, and we talk about this all the time, but in 2024 none of the top 20 films had original storylines, which is kind of sad, you know?
we talked about this when we did our 2024 wrap
right
up.
Yeah.
You know, in a world where like all the studios are beholden to shareholders and to like their stock prices, it's not surprising that this is the world that we live in. And it's not surprising why Neon like gets to do the like cool, innovative movies and social media campaigns, like, cause they're not as concerned about their share price. But like sequels have been bankrolling originals for almost as long as Hollywood has existed.
Right.
It is disturbing the general trend. But we are beginning to see, I know it's like, it's becoming just the like go-to pointing example, but we are beginning to see the sort of breakthroughs of how that gets changed. Sinners is like the prime example right now. And it's like, here's a movie that like, yeah, there was like, it's the fact that I think part of it is the fact that Ryan Coogler is this young black director who's, made these Marvel movies before. But it's not like, it wasn't, I don't think the movie was necessarily like, it was never sold of like, you need to go see it like because he's black. It's, you need to go see this movie because this movie's like really interesting and really cool, and you've never seen anything like it.
A talented young filmmaker is paired up with a movie star people know and like you know.
And they made something that is like and they made something that is going to deliver real value for your time, and it got people really interested and excited. Like it's no different than it has ever been in thousands of years of human history of trying to get people out to entertainment. But I mean, just what else can you say? Do better. Pixar, get it together.
Marketers, do better. All right, we're going down into the depths with this one. We're talking about AI. So we've been talking about a bunch of these AI lawsuits, I think, for as long as this podcast has existed. We have some updates, and the decisions are falling towards artificial intelligence. So I'll just run through a couple of these real quick. So a federal judge on Wednesday rejected a claim brought by 13 authors, including Sarah Silverman, that Meta violated their copyrights by training its AI model on their book. So the judge in that case concluded that Meta had engaged in fair use. So it used a data set of nearly 200,000 books that included the plaintiff's work to train its llama language model. And then that decision is similar to a ruling that was issued on Monday in the case of Anthropic over its language model Claude. So in that court case, the court determined that it was legal for Anthropic to train its AI tools on copyrighted works. arguing that the behavior is shielded by fair use, as in the other court case. So I'll stop there. This doesn't bode well, but what do you think?
Well, it's interesting. It's really,
Yeah.
really interesting. So, when I previously spoke about this issue on the show, I went through sort of the points of fair use,
Mm-hmm.
and the main determining factors of whether or not something is determined to be fair use. And like, it's important to think about this. And I'm actually going to be borrowing from another writer here. This is not like it was framed for me by somebody else, Ben Thompson over at Stratechery. Kind of framed it this way. And I think it's really, really important information to sort of bring to this, which is that, number one, intellectual property law is not like a God-given right. Like, it is
Mm-hmm.
a human invention, and it is essentially a government-granted monopoly and to a creator. And when thinking about sort of the malleability of intellectual property law, it's important to think that the trade-offs that come with monopoly are going to come with sort of the granting of intellectual copyright protections. Okay, so when we're talking about fair use, we're looking at three distinct elements that a judge is going to sort of rule on, and these are they're super soft and super malleable, and they're not hard and fast rules, because we are hoping that judges and the court of law are going to take into account this very amorphous world of these elements
Mm-hmm.
as they apply to a government granted monopoly over an original and creative work. So the 3 points are, of course, the purpose and character of the use of the work. Is it transformative? It's going to look at the amount used, and then it's going to look at the effect on the potential market value of the original work. Now, when I brought those things on this show 4 months ago, I said, look, it's obvious that it is transformative use of the work, but when we're looking at the amount of the work that is used, these LLMs are just gobbling up all of the source material, and which I interpreted as a clear violation of intellectual property law. I also thought that because an LLM could recreate the style and tone of an author or an artist in some way, shape, or form, that was an effect on the potential market value of the original creator. Now,
Mm-hmm.
both these judges have essentially ruled in the exact same way. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the first thing that's most interesting is about the amount used. The judges have exercised what in some ways is actually like a pretty adept understanding of LLMs, in that while they do use the entire original work and they gobble up the entire book to train their models, that book is just a droplet within a vast ocean of works that it is gobbling up, and therefore it is materially insubstantial to the overall model. And the judges have ruled that in this case, that with this new technology, it's not about the amount used in aggregate, it's about the amount used in comparison to all the other stuff that it's using. Which
Yeah.
is a pretty interesting sort of wrinkle to like the original argument. It's both cases also said that because the LLMs are transforming the works, and because what you're putting in is not what you're getting out, and as long as what you put in to an LLM and what they spit out is totally differentiated, that they are arguing that it does not affect the potential market value of the
Mm-hmm.
original works, because it is essentially a new thing that is being made. So we have a lot more clarity as sort of how the courts are interpreting this. I have a feeling that this is going to be consistent kind of across the board,
Mm-hmm.
even through appeals. And I think it's more becomes a question now of like, okay, so this is sort of the interpretation of copyright law within the context of AI. If you want further protections, it's not going to be about retrofitting copyright law to sort of like adapt to this new technology. It will require a new law
Right.
to change things. Now, Are we going to get does it look like we're going to get any sort of new law from the federal government anytime soon? Absolutely not. Which is incredibly frustrating. And I wish that they were a little bit more, I wish they were not a little bit more, I wish they were way more responsive to these types of things. But that is sort of the way that the law is being interpreted. And I have to say, I hate to sound like sort of a wishy-washy person. I do find their arguments compelling and interesting and not something that I'd previously considered.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting. And I think this is always where I've like sort of bumped up against it. But this is an argument that it is in play, like kind of that an AI training on this stuff is like a person reading books, right? Like you don't pay royalties every time you remember a book. Why should AI? And like, just like my fundamental thought is like, well, one's a robot, one's a person. And I don't know how to get past that really, like from my own standards. So I think like it will be interesting to see. And again, our federal government isn't that helpful at the moment, but like what sort of laws will come up in relation to this. I think especially once the Disney Universal kind of Mid-Journey case kind of wraps up, depending on what the outcome is there, I'd be curious to see what sort of happens in the aftermath of all of this. But
well,
yeah.
essentially like what's happening is they are taking the onus of responsibility away from the parent companies that are creating these models and putting the burden of responsibility on the user. If you are going to use these LLMs to like rip off or do your very best to recreate an original work, or in the case of like what Disney and Universal is suing Mid-Journey for, which is like making exact copies of their original characters, like that will I don't know if Mid-Journey is going to be held responsible for that, but at least with these cases, they're putting that onus of responsibility onto the user. And there's actually a really interesting sort of parallel case to this, which I wasn't privy to until, again, I read the update from Ben Thompson over at Stratechery. But, in 1980, Disney and Universal sued Sony over the invention of the Betamax, basically saying that because people could use a Sony Betamax at home to record an original Disney or Universal movie, therefore they are Sony is committing copyright infringement with the Betamax. What the judge ruled is that Sony is not liable for the creation of the Betamax, and the Betamax in and of itself is not a copyright infringement. People that are bootlegging movies and then reselling them are punishable in a court of law for copyright infringement. But because a Betamax has other use values beyond just ripping off Universal and Disney movies, therefore the existence of a Betamax is not a copyright infringement. And there is a definite parallel to these LLMs essentially being seen as tools in the same way.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know about that lawsuit before, but I don't know. I guess we'll keep an eye on all this stuff. I looked for updates in the Disney Mid-Journey case, but nothing as of yet. But if you want to hear more about that, keep listening. We will be keeping an eye on this for sure. All right, let's move on to maybe some fun stuff, a little more fun, at least, than talking about AI lawsuits. I'm so interested to hear your thoughts on this, but we talked about Bond, I believe, just in terms of like the actual character who might play James Bond. Months ago at this point. Time means nothing. It could have been yesterday. But we have a director. So Denis Villeneuve will direct the next Bond movie for Amazon MGM. I don't feel great about this. How do you feel?
Oh, I hate this choice.
Yeah, I'm not excited. Like, I mean, I don't know how you feel. I feel like we've talked about Villeneuve a little bit, and you're not like a Villeneuve guy, but like, I'm just sort of like, well, why can't he like make original movie? Like, I don't know. Like, I was cool and it was like Martin Campbell directing these things, and I was like, yeah, great, he can make a kick-ass Bond movie. No offense to Martin Campbell. Again, he made a kick-ass Bond movie, but like, I want to see like the next thing Denis Villeneuve does after Dune, not him do Bond. Sorry, sir.
I don't think he has a next thing. Denis Villeneuve
he has a lot, actually. in the can, quote unquote. Like he has some Cleopatra movie, which whatever. They've been trying to do that for a million years. And then some like short story adaptation that I'm blanking on right now. But whatever. He has like 5 things in the can, and I'm just like, well, now he's just gonna do Bond for the next 5 years. But whatever.
Well, these aren't in the can. They're like
not in the can. Sorry,
on
in the
a page
hopper.
somewhere.
In the hopper. In the hop. Not in the hopper. What's the right phrase?
In the clip. Like, in the clip.
In the clip. I
like,
guess.
You're trying to make a gun reference.
No, like on the back burner. I don't know. Okay. Like plates.
He has scripts. Yeah. He's got scripts. Yeah. He's got these scripts. He's got these rumored scripts that have been like, batted around in the trades or whatever. Yeah, I mean, whatever. Fuck that.
Everyone's directing Cleopatra
until he's made them, or until they're casting and like in production. These mean nothing. Denis Villeneuve is the Rebootrix. He will forever be known as the Rebootrix. Okay, all bow down to your Madame Rebootrix. I hate this choice mostly because Denis Villeneuve is not funny and he's absolutely sexless, and it drives me crazy. I hate his humorless, sexless worlds, and if there's anything that like should be the crux of Bond, it should be a mixture of self-aware humor and sex.
I agree that there should be sex. I will say there's some. Have you seen Dune Part 2? There's some sex stuff going on in that with Austin Butler and Léa Seydoux that I did not expect from him. I like Denis Villeneuve. I'm gonna ride for the guy.
Minimal and forgettable. Minimal and forgettable. Dune 2 sex.
Listen, can I say I agree with you that Dune should be sexy and funny, but I don't think. I think Denis Villeneuve is a great filmmaker. I agree these are not his strengths. I will say.
Yeah. No, he's good at doing gorgeous, dark, moody, like very serious things. There's a lot of there's things about Dune that I liked. I'm not trying to like shit on Dune, but I will say
I don't even care about Dune right now. I'm like the other stuff is like better in my opinion, but whatever.
I agree. But it's all very sexless and very not funny. Okay?
Yeah. Like, he's never been a funny guy. I've come out of those like sadder than I have laughing.
Dude, he's not funny at all. And he's not horny at all. And that is a problem when you're directing James Bond.
I'm just not excited. I'm like, let the man do other stuff. I guess he wants to though. But the other crazy thing about this though is they were definitely like a month or so ago, they were like, guys, we might get Christopher Nolan, who's been like wanting to do this for so long. And I would also agree, like, weird relationship with sex, but at least can be funny, I think, sometimes, you know? But like,
slightly, like, yes.
Yeah, but so I'm like, Inception, I think, is pretty funny. Maybe not always on purpose, but pretty funny.
I don't know. I think
it's interesting that they were pushing that, and they know that's a thing that there are people out there who want, and they're like, actually, just kidding. I would just love to know what happened.
Oh, I think it's I think Universal is fighting for Nolan. Like they don't. I don't think it's. I think that Nolan is very happy at Universal. I think Universal is giving him everything that he wanted, and it's a huge risk jumping over to a new studio. It would be his second new studio within the last 5 years after he left Warner Brothers to go to Universal. So I think Universal did what they had to do to keep him because he is a huge value add for that studio. They could not afford to lose Christopher Nolan in the same way that Warner Brothers has been sort of rudderless since he walked away from them over the non-theatrical stuff. So I think that it was more of like the studio did what they had to do to keep him, and since we're also, at least it's being leaked on Puck that Villeneuve doesn't have final cut of this Bond movie, that would also be another huge sticking point for our other humorless, sexless leading director.
All right. And then, okay, have you seen the 3 names that are sort of like, there's always a ton of names in the mix for actual Bond, but there are 3 that have been like popping up as like the 3.
It's Harris Dickinson, Aaron Taylor,
No.
What?
Not him, which thank God, because that's not his vibe. But no offense, I like him, but not as James Bond.
Okay, enlighten me.
The 3 that I keep seeing as people being like, these are the 3. Harris Dickinson is one of them. Jacob Elordi, who I think is too tall, and Tom Holland. Those are the 3.
Yeah. I think that Denis Villeneuve, this bodes really, really well for Harris Dickinson. I think we know he likes thin, brooding, pretty boys. So I think this fits very nicely.
Yeah.
With Harris Dickinson's whole vibe. I could definitely see Harris Dickinson being a humorless, like incel Bond for Denis Villeneuve's humorless incel Bond world.
Damn.
I think Tom Holland is a little too. I think he's a little too funny for this. Well,
that's why I'm like, are they gonna like, he's also maybe the best at action. I feel like he's got those kind of movement chops. He's like a dancer, I know. I can't see the rest of these guys like that actioning. I don't know.
No, I agree. And Jacob Elordi, if they do Elordi, an American Bond with a French Canadian
He's not American.
Director?
He's Australian, but still weird.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I apologize to all of our Australian
Actually,
listeners.
let me make sure that he's not from New Zealand, but keep going.
Okay,
Australian.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Australian.
you're right. The second you said it, I was like, oh fuck, you're right.
Yeah.
But if you have an Australian Bond with a French Canadian director, like that just feels
all over the place.
Wrong. Yeah. What are we doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sort of like, they're obviously trying to go a little younger here with the three that are popping out, and I know Tom Holland is not this young, but he just always feels so young to me personally. He just reads really young.
Yeah, he does.
That was one of my many problems with the Uncharted movie that came out a few years ago. One of many. But it'd just be interesting.
He's done some really trash movies lately.
He has.
His career has just been fucking really a bummer.
He's got the Odyssey in the hopper. We'll see what happens. Not in the hopper. I can't figure out this
what
damn
thing.
God, I can't talk. We'll see. I don't dislike Tom Holland. I wish he picked better projects most of the time, but
I wish he picked better projects, and but no, I think Harris Dickinson is definitely looking sort of like the inside track here in terms of vibe, aesthetic, being British.
He feels like a Villeneuve guy. Like he's kind of fits the vibe more than those other two.
Does,
I agree.
But when the dark horse Nicholas Hoult is announced as Bond, everyone will be
blonde. I don't know.
Everyone will be coming back and saying, "Wow, you were right. I know.
Wow.
I know."
Mm. Did you see he dyed his hair blonde?
No, I didn't.
It's like shock blonde. Doesn't feel very Bond, I'll say.
It's like platinum. He went platinum blonde.
He looks really good, actually. I'm not gonna lie.
Is this just for his Superman press tour?
I assume it's for a movie. He just had to do it, and he's on the press tour. Like I don't think he did it just for the press tour, But
well, good for him.
All right, good for him. He looks great. Shouts to you, Nicholas Hoult. All right, let's move on. Just to do this really quickly, last week we talked about our ballots for the New York Times Best Movies of the 21st Century. And now we've got their entire list, so everything's out. I'll just say I'm not super surprised at the way this all turned out just based on how they did this. Like, if I'm not mistaken, the sort of methodology is just like, it's what movies showed up on ballots the most. So like in that case, the top 10 sort of makes sense to me. Although I will say, no offense, NYT, it's an average, but I do think this list is a bit basic, if you will. What do you think?
Yeah. No Ruben Östlund, no Kelly Reichardt, no Gaspar Noé, no Alejandro Inarritu, 5 Christopher Nolans. This is all I need to know about this list to know that it is garbage.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things, like I said, like, I don't know what they really kind of expected would happen just because, like, maybe I'm wrong about the methodology of this, but I think, like, when you look at the top 10 or whatever, and it says, like, number 10 is The Social Network, and I'm like, well, yeah, it makes sense that, like, a lot of people would put The Social Network on a ballot and also have perhaps like a ton of other interesting movies on their own ballot. But I think that's how they did it, no? Like they just happened to turn up on the most ballots.
Yeah, but this is the same way that the Sight and Sound does the top 100, top 250 list every 10 years. It's more about the quality of people that they're asking. Like they're clearly like they're asking American slanted too, right? Basic bitches. Yeah.
Well, I think like actually would have to go through, because the way that like Sight and Sound does it is they ask critics. Like, no offense to like filmmakers, but I do think like critics probably think harder about this type of thing for one.
Filmmakers are included in the Sight and Sound list too.
No, yes, I know, but I'm just saying like that has more critics, and this I believe is just like filmmakers and people within the film industry.
I think it's just like, yeah, and like social media personalities.
Exactly. Like, so like that's why I think like Sight and Sound is always going to be like a bit more of an interesting list. And I also think like I said, I think people tend to maybe think about that a little more critically when they're kind of compiling their ballots for that than they might have done for this. They asked Nicholas Sparks. I don't know if you saw his. It's such bullshit. Sorry, let me try to pull it up. I did laugh, but it is bullshit. So like they ask people like that, you know, we're like, what are we doing here?
Let me just, the only good thing that I could come or like, I mean, I don't take this list seriously at all, but like the only, I don't know, I mean, it's not a serious thing. Like this is a deeply unserious thing. But the good part of it was that I did love like all the comedy mentions that made it in.
Yeah,
Superbad, Anchorman, Best in Show, Borat. I think it's really valuable for the movies like that to like pop up within this list. No Mean Girls. I don't think Mean Girls cracked
just
in.
Erasure,
which is
Erasure.
But can we, I mean, talk like at least on Reddit, the thing that was like really blowing up, Bridesmaids at 32. What the fuck is that?
I mean, it's kind of my whole vibe for this list is like there are some movies I really, really like. And even like, I don't know. I'm just like, it's not like I can say like any of these are bad. I'm just sort of like, as a whole. You know what I mean?
I can point out like, some bad ones for you. Okay.
No, that's not what I mean. I'm just saying like, I'm not like so upset at like the majority of entries on the list. I'm just sort of like, yeah, that's what I expected from an average, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the list skews very heavily American. Let me just run 100%. Through some. Let me just run through a few of the things that I find most egregious. Okay. The fact that Gladiator is even on this list, ridiculous. I don't like trash.
Thank you. Another fellow Gladiator hater.
Oh, it's such a trash movie. Ocean's 11 at 71, disgusting trash movie. That's like,
a bad take, trash. Aaron. Terrible take.
No, that movie is
terrible take.
That movie is garbage, and it doesn't need to be on this list at all.
Don't listen to Aaron.
Portrait of a Lady on Fire at 38. What are we doing here? This is.
I love that movie, but it's always been a little overvalued, I think, just because of where it sits in like a.
It does not belong at 38 behind Bridesmaids. Okay, like that's on just a pure 1-to-1 basis. There is no way that film belongs behind Bridesmaids. Okay, number 22, Grand Budapest Hotel, which like. I mean, I'm glad Wes Anderson did not crack the top 10, but to then have Royal Tenenbaums at 21 right afterwards, and Grand Budapest Hotel, like it's not a good movie. Like it's one of Wes Anderson's like weird post Owen Wilson puppet shows. Like I don't understand.
You're saying
why that
things
is.
I disagree with, Aaron. Wes should be in the top 10, but that's just me.
If Royal Tenenbaums was in the top 10. I would say, okay, I get it within the context of this list. Right. But we don't. Grand Budapest Hotel does not need to be there. Talk about sexless, humorless movies. Arrival at 29. Woof. Way too high.
One of my faves.
Oh, Sammie, that's a you issue. I'm sorry.
No, that's a you issue. Arrival's a great movie.
No, it's not.
Yes,
I don't need a language lesson from a completely.
It's a lesson in love, Aaron.
There is no love and chemistry between Jeremy Renner and Amy Adams.
I'm not even talking about them. Who gives a fuck about them? That's not what the movie's about.
It is what the movie's about. They're the core relationship.
It's about her daughter. It's about her daughter and time and love. Oh my God. Okay, fine. That's not what the movie's about. No, they're not. It's about her relationship with the aliens more than it's about her relationship with him.
In any movie like this, the aliens should only be a metaphorical representation of the core human relationship that's playing out on screen.
With her and her daughter.
Yeah, but they're the love story that they end the movie in love.
Oh my God. No, you're completely wrong. Incorrect.
I am not. That movie, I'm not a fan of that movie.
Oh,
okay.
love that movie.
Well, all right. Let me trigger you the most because the biggest conclusion of the entire list, I think Parasite might be the most
you
overrated
hate
movie
Parasite,
of all time.
and you're also incorrect. I agree. I don't think it should be number one, but your dislike of that movie is also, I don't get it.
Well, I'll tell you, I just think Bong Joon-ho's films, I don't think they're either shocking or plausible within a sort of like realistic context. I also find his social critiques to be shallow and superficial, and they're as shallow and superficial as the very things that he's critiquing. And I think that there are a lot of other directors that are talking about, like, there are even other Korean directors talking about the exact same things that are more poignant and more thoughtful than he is, and that I just personally like more. I mean, Lee Chang-dong, number one, head of the pack. I've always thought Parasite has been overrated, and I just find its sort of de facto like status as like a top 10, and in this case, number one greatest film of the last 25 years is just, it's ridiculous to me.
I love Parasite. I agree. I don't think it should be number one, but I think it's great. Cameron had a theory about why it's so high, and I think he might be onto something. Is if you look at Best Picture winners of this century, it might be the best one. Like maybe not but like think like kind of like it's a good Best Picture winner, and I think oftentimes the Academy gets that really wrong. So I think that might be like kind of helping its profile up to number one a little bit, and maybe why it made a lot of ballots, because that was like, I don't know, that was a pretty exciting Oscars moment, I would say.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I would watch Moonlight 10,000 times before I watched Parasite.
I think that's fine, but I do think that might be giving it a bit of a boost. Yeah.
Understood. What would you put as number one if this was your list?
Oh my gosh, so I have to like look at my ballot.
We had our top 10s, but like I think it's a little different of like I'm just picking my top 10s for social media versus like no, the weight of the world is going to be looking at who Sammie Purcell determines is the number one greatest movie of the last 25 years.
I think I mentioned last week that we're kind of doing a similar thing for the Atlanta Critics Circle. So I was trying to let me like pull that up. And I feel like my kind of two answers where, and it's funny because neither one of these are on my top 10. And I think both of these were in their top 10, funnily enough. So I'm basic as fuck. Maybe like In the Mood for Love or Mulholland Drive. The two choices I would put at number one if I had to be super objective about it.
Fair. No issues.
I was like, waiting.
No. I think I would, if I was like really deciding like what is objectively like the greatest movie of the past 25 years, I think I'd feel very confident about putting In the Mood for Love at number one. I would maybe consider Spirited Away as a number one choice. One.
Yeah.
Another top 10 from this list. So it's not. Yeah, you're not. I mean, there's some things that are just objectively like
that
really
are just
good.
Great. Yeah.
But yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's very American skewed list. Very sort of like kind of like pop culture
Can we end with me reading you Nicholas Sparks's ballot?
Great, yes.
Okay, so Avatar, Bohemian Rhapsody, Gladiator, Hereditary, which I found shocking actually for him, but okay. Inception, Mad Max Fury Road, The Dark Knight, Top Gun Maverick, Toy Story 3, and then my personal favorite, Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted 3D. That's Nicholas Sparks asked to make a ballot for this thing.
Yeah. Unfollow.
That's wild. Can you imagine? That's so crazy. Wow.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, that's the moment where I just go, all right, well, yeah, nice talking to you, man. And I just walk to the other side of the room.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about Nicholas Sparks ever again.
Oh man, well this was great, Sammie. This was
great.
This was excellent. Thank you for bringing all of this to the table. What do you got right? What are you writing this week? What do you got? You got any reviews out?
Well, it's kind of a truncated week for us because we've got July 4th coming up, and I'm actually going out of town on Wednesday. But before that, I will be reviewing the new Jurassic World movie. I know everyone's really excited. Stop the presses. We're getting ready. I'm seeing it tonight. I'm seeing it in like 2 hours. So exciting stuff. look out for that.
For some reason, Jurassic Park is targeting with the Spanish version of the trailer on Instagram.
Weird.
Which is weird in and of itself, but also I gotta say it was looking really, really bad. Some of these set pieces with this inflatable raft and a T-Rex is laughably ridiculous.
Reviews aren't great.
Stupid.
For initial views, not great. Yeah.
So that'll be fun to look forward to. I don't have too much going on over here. Building up to July 24th, playing Harakiri, which will be objectively amazing. It's the highest rated film on Letterboxd. Did you know that?
I did not. Wow.
It is the highest rated film on Letterboxd. So if you want to see the highest rated film on Letterboxd,
maybe a better list than this one.
35 millimeter. Yes.
Yeah.
In 35 millimeter, come on down to the Plaza Theater, July 24th. We'll be having a fun time. Of course, if you like this show, please like, subscribe, rate, review, hit us with the 5 stars, leave a little comment. It really helps us out. You can follow us at Crash Zoom Podcast on TikTok and Instagram. You can email us, crashzoompod@gmail.com. That's crashzoompod@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. This has been great, Sammie, and until next week, I will talk to you.
I'll see you next week.